I'm a 42-year-old man, and I thought I had a pretty normal life. I've been married to my wife, Lena, for almost 15 years. We met when we were both still in our 20s, full of dreams, energy, and the kind of naivety that makes you believe love can conquer anything. She was always the fiery one, outgoing, laughing loudly, the type of woman who filled every room she walked into. I was the quieter, steady type, the one who tried to keep our world stable and safe. Somehow, we balanced each other out. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but whose is? We had our ups and downs, arguments about money, disagreements about how to spend weekends, frustrations about how little time we seemed to have just for us. But I always thought love was still there, even if it wasn't as passionate or intense as it had been in the beginning. Looking back now, there were signs. The distance. The way she'd roll her eyes when I tried to hug her from behind while she was cooking. How her phone was always face down, the screen locked with a code I didn't know. She told me it was just work, stress, hormones, whatever excuse fit the moment. And I believed her, because I loved her. Because I didn't want to imagine a world where she wasn't mine. The story really begins right after my father passed away. He'd been sick for a long time, and when he finally left this world, it hit me harder than I expected. I had to spend 3 days in my hometown, helping my family, arranging the funeral, dealing with all the emotions that came crashing down. Those were some of the hardest days of my life. And the one person I wanted most to lean on, Lena, was distant even then. She sent a few short messages, asked if I was okay, but it felt cold. Like she was going through the motions of being a wife, without the heart behind it. I didn't know it then, but while I was saying goodbye to my father, something inside my marriage was dying too. When I came back from the village after my father's funeral, I was drained, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I thought walking through the door of our apartment would feel like relief, like finally being home. Instead, it was the moment everything started to crumble. I stepped inside, carrying my small bag, and the first thing I noticed was Lena in the kitchen. She looked startled, like a child caught doing something wrong. That wasn't the welcome I expected after 3 days of burying my father. She forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then I heard it, the shuffle of footsteps, the sound of movement from the balcony. Before I could process what was happening, a man climbed in from outside. Bare-chested, only in jeans, his hair messy like he just rolled out of bed. My stomach dropped. My hands went cold. I froze, staring at him, staring at her, unable to make sense of what I was seeing. I wanted it to be a misunderstanding, some ridiculous coincidence, anything but the truth my heart was already whispering. Lena rushed to speak first, her voice high and defensive. "This is my friend's brother. He just needed a place to stay for the night. He had nowhere to go." I just stood there, numb, trying to process her words while my eyes scanned the room. The trash bin was full, crumpled bar receipts, a pizza box from her favorite place, and the unmistakable evidence of used condoms. My chest tightened, and it felt like someone had shoved a knife straight through me. In that moment, I realized I hadn't just lost my father. I was losing my wife too. I don't even remember how I found my voice, but the words came out hoarse, trembling with disbelief. "Who is he, Lena?" The guy looked down, avoiding my eyes, fumbling with his belt like he couldn't get out fast enough. Lena stepped in front of me, as if blocking my path to him. "I told you, he's just my friend's brother. He had nowhere else to go, so I let him crash here. Don't make a scene. Don't make a scene." The audacity of those words hit me like a slap. My father's coffin had barely been lowered into the ground, and here she was, caught red-handed, and still treating me like the problem. "Then what's this?" I snapped, pointing at the trash bin. My voice broke on the last word. "Explain this, Lena. Explain the pizza, the bar check, the—" I couldn't even bring myself to finish. Her face hardened. She crossed her arms like she'd rehearsed this, like lying was easier than telling the truth. "You're imagining things. You always overreact. Do you think I'd really cheat on you? After everything we've built?" The guy finally muttered something about leaving and slipped out of the door like a thief. I barely noticed. All my focus was on her. My wife. My partner of 15 years. The woman who once promised me forever. I wanted her to break down, to admit it, to beg for forgiveness, to show me something real. Instead, she stayed cold, her voice sharp, her eyes refusing to meet mine. You're tired. You've just lost your father. You're looking for problems where there aren't any. Stop it. But deep down, I already knew. I could feel it in my bones, in the pit of my stomach. She wasn't just lying, she was choosing the lie over me. That night was one of the longest of my life. I sat in the living room while Lena disappeared into the bedroom, slamming the door as if I had wronged her. The silence in the apartment was suffocating. I could still smell the pizza box in the trash, see the corner of that bar receipt sticking out, mocking me. Grief for my father was already heavy enough, but this was different. It wasn't the clean, brutal finality of death. This was betrayal, slow, messy, poisonous. And it seeped into every part of me. At first, I felt rage. My hands shook as I replayed the image of that half-dressed man slipping out of our home. I wanted to break something, to scream, to throw all of her lies back at her. But the anger burned fast and left me with something worse, emptiness. Because the truth was, I still loved her. God help me, even with all the evidence in front of me, I wanted to believe her story. I wanted to cling to the hope that maybe, somehow, it wasn't what it looked like. That I wasn't just another fool who trusted too much. But every time I closed my eyes I saw it again, the guilt in her expression, the way her story twisted and bent, the way she turned cold instead of reaching for me. It hurt more than anything I'd ever felt. I thought losing my father was the hardest pain I'd have to face. I was wrong. Losing my wife, while she was still right there in the next room, was worse. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, staring at the floor, listening to the muffled sounds of Lena moving around in the bedroom. My mind ran in circles. Should I confront her again, demand the truth, or just walk away and never look back? By morning my head hurt, my chest felt hollow, and I knew I had to make a decision. Staying in limbo was killing me. Part of me wanted to pack my bags and leave immediately. To burn the bridge, cut her out, and never give her another chance to twist the knife. But then another part, the part still bound to her by 15 years of shared memories, laughter, struggles, and love, hesitated. I thought of the first time I saw her smile, the way she used to fall asleep on my shoulder, the promises we made when we were young and stupid enough to believe nothing could tear us apart. So I chose a middle ground. I told her we needed to talk. Really talk. When I said the words, she didn't look scared or remorseful. Just annoyed. Like my pain was an inconvenience. She brushed her hair back, crossed her arms, and muttered, "Fine. Talk." I poured everything out. How I felt, what I saw, how much it hurt, how much I still loved her but couldn't keep living in lies. My voice cracked more than once, and I hated how desperate I sounded, but it was the truth. Her response? Cold as ever. She stuck to her story, denied everything, made me feel like I was insane for even suggesting otherwise. "You're paranoid. You're grieving your father, and now you're imagining things. I can't help you if you don't trust me." That was the moment I realized the decision wasn't really mine anymore. I could choose to believe her lies and swallow my pain, or I could face the truth that the woman I loved had already chosen someone else, at least for that night, maybe longer. I decided I wouldn't leave her yet. But I also wouldn't blind myself anymore. If she was lying, the truth would come out, and I would be ready. Days passed, and the air in our home grew heavier with every silence. We still lived under the same roof, still went through the motions. She cooked, I worked, we exchanged small words about groceries or bills, but it all felt staged. Like two actors playing a married couple who had long since stopped loving each other. Every time her phone buzzed, my chest tightened. She'd pick it up quickly, tilting the screen away from me, her fingers moving fast, her face blank. I tried not to watch, but I couldn't help it. Suspicion became my shadow. At night, I'd lie awake beside her, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing. I wanted so badly to believe that she was still mine, that the man in jeans had been some bizarre mistake, but my gut screamed otherwise. She never reached for me anymore. Her back was always turned. The breaking point came one evening when I suggested we spend the weekend together, just the two of us, like we used to. I even offered to book a small trip, something simple to reconnect. She didn't even hesitate before shutting me down. "I don't have time for that. Stop being so needy." The words stung deeper than I expected. I wasn't asking for much, just her. Just a piece of the woman I'd given half my life to. I snapped. My voice cracked with all the pain I'd been holding back. "Needy? Lena, I just buried my father. I come home and find another man here, half naked, and you expect me to sit quietly while you pretend everything is normal? Tell me the truth. Please, just tell me the truth." Her expression didn't soften. If anything, it grew colder. She looked at me like I was pathetic. "You're paranoid. You're making a fool of yourself. If you can't trust me, maybe this marriage isn't working anymore." That sentence shattered something inside me. It wasn't just what she said, it was how casually she said it, as if 15 years of love could be dismissed like an old receipt. And that's when I realized the truth I'd been avoiding. Maybe I was the only one still fighting for us. After that night, everything changed. The cracks that had been there, subtle, almost ignorable, grew wider, deeper. Every word she said now carried a weight I couldn't ignore. Every touch, every glance, or lack thereof, reminded me that the woman I loved had walls around her heart, and I wasn't allowed inside. I watched her move through the apartment like a ghost. She laughed when friends came over, but I noticed the little things, the way she never looked at me, the way she'd avoid any conversation about us. It was like living with someone who existed in the same space but in a completely different world. I tried to hold on to normalcy. I told myself it could be a mistake, a one-time thing. I tried to sleep beside her without staring at her back, tried to eat dinner without scanning the trash or her phone. But the evidence lingered. It wasn't just the man on the balcony, the receipts, the pizza boxes. It was her attitude, her detachment, the coldness that had replaced warmth. I remember one evening, sitting alone on the couch, staring at the wall, feeling the emptiness seep into my bones. I loved her. God, I loved her. And yet, I was losing her in ways I couldn't fight. I wanted to scream, to plead, to beg her to just let me in. But every time I opened my mouth, the words felt weak, meaningless. The worst part was realizing that I couldn't fix this with love alone. She wasn't the woman I thought I knew anymore. The person lying beside me at night was a stranger, someone capable of betrayal and cold indifference. And every day, that stranger became more real, while the wife I had loved became a fading memory. By the end of the second week, I felt completely alone in our home. It was the strangest kind of loneliness, being with someone every day yet feeling like you are living in a separate reality. Lena moved through her routines without me, and I moved through mine without her. I stopped trying to talk. Every attempt at conversation ended in frustration or cold dismissal. I stopped asking questions. Every answer, or lack thereof, reminded me that I wasn't welcome in her world anymore. I found myself retreating into silence, spending hours in the bedroom staring at the ceiling, thinking about what I could have done differently. Was I too predictable? Too boring? Did she get tired of me? I hated myself for these thoughts, but I couldn't stop them. Even at work, I was distant. I smiled less, laughed less, and spent long moments staring out the window thinking about the man on our balcony and the quiet way she let him into her life. My friends noticed my quietness, my absence, my distracted mind. But how could I explain it? How could I tell anyone that the person I had loved for 15 years had chosen betrayal over me, and I still ached to keep her? Every night, I fell asleep in a haze of grief, guilt, and disbelief. My father was gone, my wife was slipping away, and I was trapped in a house full of memories and silence. I had become a ghost in my own life, and I didn't know how to escape. By the third week, desperation had taken hold. I was running out of ways to cope. Every glance at her, every subtle gesture, reminded me that the woman I loved was no longer mine in the way I thought she was. I tried to confront her again, carefully this time, softer. I asked her about him, the man on the balcony, the evidence I had found, the lies she had told. I tried to sound calm, rational, but inside I was trembling. My heart felt raw, my chest tight, like I had been punched from the inside. Her response was predictably cold. She rolled her eyes, sighed, and said, "You're being ridiculous. It was nothing. Can you just let it go?" Let it go. Those words echoed through my mind like a curse. Let it go. How do you let go of betrayal? How do you let go of a man half naked on your balcony while your wife pretends everything is normal? I started questioning everything, my instincts, my judgment, my worth. Had I been blind for 15 years? Had I misread her every smile, every word, every sign? And yet, despite the doubt, despite the hurt, I couldn't stop loving her. I began leaving little notes around the house, small reminders of us, things that I hoped might awaken something in her, memories of better days, moments of laughter, of intimacy, of connection. I wasn't sure if it was love or desperation driving me. Maybe both. And in the quiet moments, when the apartment was empty, I allowed myself to cry. Not just for my father, not just for the betrayal, but for the woman I thought I knew, for the life I thought we shared, and for the man I was becoming in this pain. By the end of the third week, I realized I could no longer avoid the truth. The denial, the hope, the excuses, they weren't protecting me. They were poisoning me. Every day spent with Lena pretending everything was normal was another day I lost myself. I decided I needed to confront the reality of her choices, no matter how much it would hurt. I asked her to sit with me in the living room, away from the distractions of phones, messages, and work. I looked at her, really looked at her, searching for a flicker of remorse, of guilt, of love. There was nothing. Cold eyes, tight lips, the posture of someone who had already checked out. "I need to know the truth," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "Was it just one night? Was he just a friend? Or have you been seeing him for longer?" She sighed, leaned back, and shrugged, almost casually. "You're making this bigger than it is. I told you, it was nothing. Why can't you just trust me?" Her words hit me like a hammer. The casual dismissal, the lack of acknowledgement of my pain, the refusal to even take responsibility, it was all the confirmation I didn't want but needed. I felt my heart break again, slower this time, with the weight of recognition. She wasn't going to change. She wasn't going to apologize. She wasn't going to fight for us. And in that moment, I knew that love alone wasn't enough to keep us together. After confronting her, I spent hours alone, pacing the apartment, replaying every memory, every laugh, every promise we had made. I had to make a choice: continue living like a ghost in my own home, pretending to trust a woman who had already chosen betrayal, or take the painful step of reclaiming myself. I loved her. I still did. But love wasn't enough anymore. Love couldn't erase the man on the balcony, the receipts, the trash, the coldness that replaced warmth. Love couldn't force her to care. I thought about walking away immediately, packing my things, leaving this apartment and this marriage behind. The thought terrified me. What would life be like without her, after 15 years? But the thought of staying and slowly dying inside was even worse. Finally, I made a decision. Not impulsively, not angrily, but with clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. I would leave. Not as a punishment, not out of spite, but to protect what little of myself remained. To stop hoping for a version of our marriage that no longer existed. I told her simply, "I can't keep living like this. I love you, but I can't ignore what's happened. I need to leave, at least for a while, to think, to breathe, to find myself again." She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She just nodded, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Cold, detached, indifferent. And I realized, as much as it hurt, that her indifference had made the decision easier. The next morning, I packed a small bag. Clothes, toiletries, a few personal items, and a notebook full of thoughts I hadn't shared with anyone. Each item I folded into the suitcase felt heavier than the last, not just in weight, but in the weight of leaving behind 15 years of shared life, memories, and love. Lena didn't stop me. She watched silently as I zipped my bag, her face unreadable, cold as ever. No words of regret, no apology, no attempt to make me stay. The absence of emotion was its own kind of cruelty. I walked to the door, took a deep breath, and turned one last time. My chest ached, my throat burned, and my eyes felt raw. But I knew this was the only way I could survive, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Stepping out into the quiet morning air, I felt a strange mix of relief and devastation. The city was waking up, indifferent to my pain, just like she had been. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of clarity. I wasn't running from her. I was running to myself. The apartment behind me wasn't just a home anymore. It was a graveyard of the life I thought we shared. And walking away, as painful as it was, felt like the first step toward breathing again. In the days and weeks after leaving, I found myself thinking constantly about everything that had happened, the funeral, the betrayal, the coldness in her eyes. Pain lingered like a shadow I couldn't shake. Some nights, I cried alone in my apartment, mourning not just my father but the life I had thought I shared with Lena. But with reflection came clarity. I realized that love doesn't justify enduring betrayal. Love doesn't mean excusing cruelty or indifference. Loving someone who refuses to meet you halfway, who chooses lies over honesty, slowly destroys you from the inside out. I also realized that I had allowed myself to be consumed by her actions. I had given her control over my happiness, my peace, my sense of worth. And no matter how much I loved her, that love couldn't protect me from her choices. It was the first step toward reclaiming myself. Painful, yes, but necessary. I began to write in my notebook, not just memories, but my feelings, my anger, my grief. I reached out to friends, to family, people who had been silent witnesses to my sorrow, and allowed myself to be supported for the first time in weeks. For the first time, I understood that betrayal isn't just about someone else's actions, it's about the choices you make in response. And I chose to survive. Slowly, I began to rebuild. At first, it was small things, making my own meals, reclaiming little corners of my apartment, taking walks I had once shared with her alone. I forced myself to laugh again, even if it felt hollow at first. I started reconnecting with friends I had drifted away from, people who reminded me of who I was before the grief and the betrayal took over. I poured more energy into my work, not as an escape but as a way to remind myself that I was still capable of creation, of focus, of purpose. The pain of losing her didn't disappear, it lingered like an echo, but I began to understand that pain didn't have to control me. I learned to breathe through it, to acknowledge it without letting it define my every thought. Sometimes I still think of her, of the life we might have had, of the love that once felt infinite. But I've learned that remembering doesn't mean returning. I've learned to separate the memory of love from the reality of betrayal, and in that space, I've found a strange freedom. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged to myself again. Looking back, I see the story of my life with Lena not just as a tale of grief and betrayal, but as a harsh teacher. I learned that love, even the deepest love, cannot survive lies and cold indifference. I learned that no matter how much you give, how much you sacrifice, how much you forgive, some people are incapable of meeting you halfway. I also learned something about myself. I learned that I am stronger than I ever imagined. That even when my heart feels shattered, I can rebuild it piece by piece. That even after losing someone I thought was my forever, life can still hold meaning, joy, and hope. My advice to anyone going through something similar: trust your instincts, honor your pain, and never let love blind you to betrayal. Leaving doesn't mean you stop loving, it means you start valuing yourself. Sometimes the hardest thing is walking away from someone you love, but it's also the bravest, and often, the only way to survive. I don't know if I'll ever stop thinking about her entirely. Maybe I won't. But I do know that I've chosen myself, and that choice is saving me. And for now, that has to be enough.